Welcome to Unmasking Dementia Lived Experiences, a podcast featuring families who have navigated the challenges of dementia. Through heartfelt stories, we will delve into trials, triumphs, and wisdom gained along the way. My name is Christiana. I'm a registered nurse, dementia advocate, children's author specializing in dementia education, memory care specialist, owner of reputable memory care facilities in Toronto, Canada, as well as the founder of a Roosevelt Grammar Wellness Hub, a charitable organization that caters to the needs of communities of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Welcome to Unmasking Dementia Lived Experiences. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Debbie Compton, a compassionate three-time primary caregiver for parents with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and vascular dementia, a community educator for the Alzheimer's Association since 2017. Debbie is also a certified caregiving consultant and advocate. She's the author of 10 books. Imagine that, 10 books. I'm sort of on my sixth one, 4 published, and I'm working on 2 right now. And her books include Caregiving, How to Hold On While Letting Go, and her latest international bestseller, The Caregiver's Advocate. As the founder of the Purple Vine, Debbie supports caregivers through consultations, a blog, and a newsletter. Debbie, we are so excited to have you here. You have a very, very inspiring story to tell, and I can only imagine how difficult and challenging it was.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and share with folks because there's just a lot of help out there if you know where to find it.
You are right. Finding it is the tricky part of it because most of this help is more digital, and a lot of our seniors are not, technologically inclined. So grassroots is
Right.
so important for, the older folks that are facing the challenges of dementia. Debbie,
Exactly.
you've had the unique experience of being a primary caregiver for 3 parents facing Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and vascular dementia. How did these experiences shape your perspective on caregiving?
Oh my goodness. Well, I was in business traveling coast to coast and I had planned on retiring with the company that I was at. Caregiving was not in the cards. I didn't think. Obviously, I didn't see the cards. So when dad got Parkinson's and my mother already had vascular dementia, but she was very high functioning. So I wasn't really concerned about it. I didn't know enough about the disease to realize how bad it was going to get. And so that's part of the thing. And then my mother in law developed Alzheimer's. And so we moved her in with us. And that's when it was very clear that I could not keep doing my job traveling coast to coast and take care of them. So I had to make a decision. And so I left the corporate world and became a full time caregiver. And
Mm.
I was just in over my head. I had no idea what was going on. And so that's where I said that, help is, there's a lot more help available now than there was back then when I started the caregiving journey. When dad started hallucinating, for example, I'd never even been around anyone who hallucinated. I had no clue what I was doing and I didn't know what to do. And so I started researching, and the only thing I could find was don't argue with them. So
Mhm.
that's a great starting point, but that is not enough. And I needed more information. I needed help. And I had a lot of trouble finding the information that I needed. I'd spend hours and hours of research, and so that is what caused me to develop the Purple Vine because I don't want other caregivers to go through what I did. I don't want them to struggle the way that I did. I already made a ton of mistakes. You might as well learn from mine.
Absolutely. It's one of those diseases that comes to you as a surprise. No one is really prepared for this. And
Right.
the thing that the doctor does not tell you when you are being given that diagnosis is they tell you your loved one, you and your loved one that, okay, you have dementia, but they fail to tell you to tighten your seatbelt because you are in for the ride of your life. Because I think
Yes.
this is one of them, it's like a roller coaster for families.
Absolutely. That's the way I describe it too. It's like a wild roller coaster that
Yes.
you're in the dark. You can't even see which way it's going to twist and turn next. And it's very difficult. And that's one of the things that I do now also is to coordinate with doctors who don't have a lot of time. They've got a lot on their plate and they're super busy. And so what I tell them is that when you have someone who you've just recently diagnosed, give them my information because I will be more than happy to help prepare them for what's ahead. If you know what's coming, you can better deal with it. But when you get blindsided, it's very hard. You're always playing catch up and it's a struggle.
Yes, absolutely. And the beautiful thing is that you talking to someone from a place of experience actually gives them that added confidence, right? Because there's
Hmm.
something about lived experiences that bring people together. That is why I do this
Yes.
podcast, so that people can hear from experiences from people such as yourself. So I'm just wondering, what inspired you to transition from being a caregiver? Like, you've explained most of that, like, so what else can you tell us that, is the inspiration behind it, apart from, telling people about it? You could have just kept with your community, right? With family
Hmm.
and friends, but you decided to actually expand it to, a global, environment for people to seek help and to get support. What was that inspiration behind that?
Yeah. Well, the inspiration actually was a little hospice nurse. And she came to the house. I brought her in much too late because I didn't know any better. My mother-in-law was passing in our guest room, and she saw the bed alert system that we created, and she saw the door safety system that we created. And she said, "Where did you read about that?" And I kind of laughed. It's like, I didn't read about it anywhere. I could not find the help that I needed, so we created something.
Mhm.
And she said those magic words that changed my life. She said, other caregivers could really benefit from this information. It would help other people. And I was just floored because I'd never considered that before. I thought everybody else had it figured out. I was the last one to the party. Everybody else knows what they're doing. It's just me over here struggling. And it's surprising how many caregivers believe that. And it's not true. Everybody's struggling. It is hard. It is challenging. There is no rule book for caregiving. Everyone is different. They were different before they got the disease. They're different after they got the disease. So, what worked for mom wouldn't work for dad, and what worked for my mother in law wouldn't work for dad. And so, because you also have different relationships with those people. And so, there's a lot of things that play into it. That's why, in my first book that you referred to, The Caregiving How to Hold On While Letting Go, I
Yeah.
wrote that about my experiences with my mother-in-law and with my dad and with my mom. And in that I have three siblings. And so for example, like when mom was doing what I call the loop-de-loop, when she was just repeating, 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 asking you the same questions over and over and over, and it was just making me crazy. And
Yes, it's tough.
and
Tough.
so then I came up with some ways to distract her and, get her off track and get her to quit. But my older brother has a different style and a different approach. And then
Mhm.
I noticed my younger brother had a different style and my sister had a different one. So I put all four ways that we handle that in the book so that you have options. Because as a caregiver, the more options you can get, the better. So that's why I share all of those. It's like, try this. And I never say this will work because no one knows that. You
It may
don't
work one
know.
day, but not the next. So,
Yes, and it might work in the morning and not in the afternoon. You just don't know because
Mhm.
the disease is always changing. And then again, like I said, the personalities, you got all the things in there. If they're tired, it's just not going to work that time, but it might work when they're well rested. So there's
Mhm.
so many factors involved in it that that's what makes it so challenging. And honestly, I love that because I love a good challenge. And that's why I have caregivers contact me via Zoom, which is great for them. They don't have to worry about getting their loved one up, getting them dressed, getting them around, worrying about what they're getting into, worrying about getting there on time, all the struggles. I know the struggles, I've lived it. And
Mm.
so instead, they can schedule a Zoom consultation if their loved one usually takes a nap in the afternoon. Schedule it in the afternoon. You know, if something comes up, reschedule. It's fine. I understand. I have been there.
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes the big difference because I do have the book training, which I didn't get until after two of my loved ones had passed away because there was no time. There was no time. I felt like I was just boom, overnight caregiver because I
Wow.
didn't know the warning signs.
Mhm.
Now I know that if I knew the warning signs, I could have prepared better. I would have known what was coming. And again, that's what inspires me to help other caregivers because I try to help them prepare for what's coming. Because if you're prepared, you can have an easier time. And
Yes.
then with the internet, I mean, it's amazing. I talk to people in Israel, in the UK, in Canada, all over the place
Yeah.
because the world is made so much smaller with the
Yes,
internet.
it is. It is.
And it's fantastic because we can share those resources. I love that.
Yes. And the flexibility is so important because
Mhm.
from 1 minute to the next, you don't know what's going to happen. You may have an appointment and that night you don't sleep at all. And so you are
Right.
tired and you shouldn't be driving, stuff like that. So that is amazing what
Mhm.
you're doing. So, for you, faith and humor are central to the approach that you take,
Yes.
as they are mine. Although I will add a little bit of dancing to the mix because I love to dance. And
Good. Love
a
it.
lot of dancing at Alexis Lodge, my memory care facility. So, how have you encouraged or incorporated these elements into the education and training that you give caregivers that are facing, these challenges. So how do you encourage them to, incorporate humor? Because caregiver guilt is one of those big things that hangs over people's heads. Like you said
Yes.
at the beginning, you made mistakes. There are lots of
Yeah.
mistakes that are made along the way, and people
Right.
fall and they feel bad and stuff like that. So how do you
Right.
get over that?
You have to change your mindset. You're surrounded by negativity. At one point in time, I was caring for all three of my loved ones with different forms of dementia. It was depressing. It was stressful. It was exhausting. It was tough. I honestly don't know how people survive caregiving without God. I just don't
Mm.
because I remember a specific time I was in the bathroom scrubbing the floor for the third time that day because my mother-in-law couldn't see the toilet and had problems with it, which I know now, buy a colored toilet seat. Then she can see it.
Yeah,
Didn't know, didn't think of
they
it.
contrast. Yes, yes.
Yeah, contrasting so they can see it. Put a colored rug. I mean, there's just a lot of things you can do. So I didn't know any of that. So I'm scrubbing the floor again and just crying because I was so tired and I was so worn out. I was experiencing caregiver burnout, but I didn't even know that was a thing back then. And so then what I did was remind myself of the scripture because scripture brings me encouragement. And so
Mhm.
then I was reminded, I'm crying and I'm praying, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. I
Mhm.
can do all things, even scrub this bathroom floor for the third time through Christ who gives me strength. And
Mhm.
his mercies are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Because
Yes,
I teach caregivers to start every day fresh. Don't hang on to resentment, anger, bitterness, the things you did wrong. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's in
yes,
the past, it's over. You did the best you could do with the knowledge that you had at the time. And so now you just move forward and get
that is,
more knowledge and focus on the solution, on the positivity. Because you know what? No matter how bad things are, there are funny things that happen.
yeah.
You just have to focus on that. Because even when my mom couldn't speak anymore, I'd get down in front of her and I'd get down eye level so she could see me and wait until she saw me in front of her. And then I'd make a crazy face and just puff out my cheeks and roll my eyes or do whatever. And the funny thing is, then she would make that face back to me, and both
Mhm.
of us would just laugh. It was wonderful.
Yeah,
That's a blessing. That's a
it- it-
connection of the hearts
yes.
when the words are not there. And so you can do
Yeah.
that.
See, the other thing that came to mind while you were talking about your brother and your brother, was it brothers and sister?
Yeah, I have 2 brothers and 1 sister.
Your brothers and sister and how they have different approaches. See, you as a family are blessed because
Yes.
a big challenge in this disease process or in this journey is that dementia could break the very fabric that holds families together.
Yes.
It causes
Yes.
discord, and some people end up
Mhm.
never talking to each other. Sometimes people end up in court, and or the
Mhm.
primary caregiver gets absolutely no support whatsoever. Sometimes from
Mhm.
children, sometimes from siblings. So
Mhm.
when like I always say, all hands on board. I believe that dementia is not just even a personal disease or family disease. I believe it's a community disease. Because if we
Yes.
all join hands together, if as a friend or neighbor, I know your situation, and I stop by and say, you know what, how about you go for a walk while I sit with mom or dad, or I bring in a casserole, that is helping.
Yes.
That
Yes.
those things are so important. So
Yes.
yes,
You are right on target. Absolutely. And my siblings were amazing. We're all Christians and we all I was the primary caregiver, but they did not give me fits over it. You know, how I see some people questioning everything that the other one's doing. They were super supportive. They said, "We know you love mom and dad. We know you want the best for them. You make the call." Because I would, we would discuss if it was a big issue. Of course, if it's small things, I'm just going to do what needs to be done.
Mhm.
But, when it comes to selling their house and things like that, we all talked it through and we all worked together and coordinated together, and it was a huge blessing. That was not totally the case with my mother-in-law. I was not her power of attorney. I was for mom and dad. So,
Mhm.
but I was not for my mother-in-law. Yet she was living with me. And so I was very restricted on what I could do, and when I needed to take her to the doctor and things like that. And I could take her and I'd discuss it with the doctors, I wasn't the power of attorney. So it was hard. And there was a lot of questioning that went on because his family was not familiar with the disease. And she
Mhm.
had Alzheimer's and it completely changed her personality, her behavior, everything. She behaved in ways that she never would have done. And so what I talk with caregivers about there too is to remember that's the disease. That's not your loved one. That
Right.
is the disease that's
Mhm.
speaking to you.
Right.
Remember your loved one prior to the disease because that's who they truly are. And so that's what we did is just focus on that and we just got through the best we could. I tried educating them along the way, teaching them things as I learned it. And it worked out really well in the end, but we had a lot of struggles there.
Actually, speaking of knowing who the person was, especially with a disease such as Alzheimer's, where it's slow and progressive, people may actually start changing years before a diagnosis.
Yes.
So that personality change, people would say,
Mhm.
hindsight, no wonder, she was doing that, So I think,
Yes.
forgiveness is so important. I have a friend, right, whose neighbor has dementia now. And her daughter met him at a store and she approached him because he was having some difficulties. He just started to swear at her. Like, can you imagine if she did not know? Right? You
Mhm.
start saying, what
Mhm.
a mean, grumpy old man, or that old man is so rude and stuff like that. So sometimes we should, cut people some slack, take a step back and just think, why is this person acting so weird or so rude, right?
Mhm.
So like just, being more mindful of people and situations is very important also
It
because
is. It is. And one of the funny things that I love that mom did is that she was a social butterfly. And so she never met a stranger, even when she couldn't remember people's names or anything. She always thought that she knew them. And so I took her out and we're going to Olive Garden to get a bite to eat. And she stops at the very first table. Well, hello, how are you? It's so good to see you. And this man has this terrified look on his face of, "Do I know you? Who are you? What's happening?" And it just cracked me up, but I'm like, "Come on, mom, let's go along." Yeah. So she just stopped at the very next table. I mean, we did it every table. So till the waitress queued in, and instead of taking us way back to the back where she was going, she
Mhm.
decided to stop at the first available, which was smart.
Yes, wonderful. That's great.
Uh-huh.
So, as a certified caregiving consultant and caregiver advocate, what are some of the most common challenges caregivers face, and how do you help them overcome those challenges?
One of the things is that caregivers always feel like, and not always, oftentimes feel like they're all alone. They don't have anybody who's going to help them. And while part of that can be true, you may be all alone, you feel in the journey, but there is help available. And you most likely have people who come up to you and say, "Is there anything I can do?" And what do we do as a caregiver? We say, "No, it's fine. I got it." Because we have that Wonder Woman cape on, we got it all. We can do
Yes,
it. And so, what I tell caregivers is take an index card and write on that index card things that would be great if someone did for you. Maybe it's mow the lawn, bring a potluck dinner one night, whatever it is, do the laundry. It doesn't have to even be related to caregiving, just things that would help you. So then put that in your purse, take it with you. Then when that person comes up to you and says, "Well, is there anything I can do?" You whip out that little index card, hand it to them, and say, "Actually, is there anything on this list that you would like to do?"
that
Because
is
then, yeah, because then I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not putting you in a situation where you would have to do something that you're not comfortable with or that you don't want to do. I'm saying, "Is there anything on this list that you would like to do?" Changes the dynamic. And
Yes.
my brother really got me on that one, my younger brother, because we're very close, all four of us, and we're super close in age. There's only 5 years between the oldest brother and the youngest brother, and we got two girls in between. And so,
Mhm. Yeah, they were busy.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, "Mom, what were you thinking?" And she
Yeah.
says, "Well, I just wanted to have them all at one time so you guys could
Get
all
to
play together." It
Yeah.
actually was a great strategy. We became best friends and worst enemies when we were growing up. Uh, but we're all best friends now, so it's wonderful.
That's amazing.
But he was trying to help me do something, and I was trying to be Miss I got it all under control. I can handle everything. And he said, "Deb, don't rob me of my blessing."
Oh,
And that hit home
oh,
because how do you feel when you help someone else? It makes you feel better. And
yes.
so he was offering to help, and by my saying no, I was robbing him of the blessing of feeling better. And I've never forgotten that. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, wow."
Someone told me that a couple of years ago. See, I'm a giver. I love giving, and it
Me
makes
too.
me happy when I'm giving. But taking, it's hard for me. But someone,
Mhm.
why, same thing. Why are you depriving people of their blessings? Because it is more blessed to give than to receive, you know?
Yes, ma'am.
Give
Yep,
also give them the opportunity. It's still really hard to do, but I'm
it
trying.
is.
It's like I was at the Alzheimer's Society of Toronto. I did a presentation about my memory
Mhm.
care facility about I think it was 2019, just before Christmas. They were so taken with my presentation, and the COO said to me, what can we do for you? What would you like? And I said something
Mm.
like, I wish, you know, the world, people, she said, not the world, what would you like? If
Narrow down.
I couldn't come up with anything. I just
Oh,
don't have that ask. So it's a beautiful thing to learn. And as a
mm,
caregiver, even as a parent, I remember when my children were babies, when they cried, even if their dad was holding them, I would yank that baby off his hands because I felt like I was the only one who could,
yep.
comfort the child. So, but now I tell caregivers, like, you know what? If you stress yourself to the point of burnout and you get sick or something happens to you and you can no longer care for your loved one, you are doing them a disservice. So it's
Yes.
best that you do self-care. Take care of yourself so that you're
Mhm.
able to handle their needs. Allow people to come in and lift up some of that weight from you. So I know it's hard, but it's a lesson. And the other thing is asking caregivers to be a little bit selfish. Selfishness is like being self full, right? You're
Mhm.
looking after your own self because it's so important. Because if you are depleted, how can you help someone else?
Which is so true. It's so true. And I mean, when I give talks on avoiding caregiver burnout, it's a challenge because that was the hardest thing for me. And I tell people, it's like I almost feel like a hypocrite telling you because I hit rock bottom. I let it get to the worst extent before I said, I have to have help and you have to help me. And that was not with my parents. Again, that was different situation. But you know, there were 5 kids and I'm the daughter-in-law doing all the care. And
Mhm,
I'm like, no, you're going to step up. And
mhm,
so I took matters to the extreme and I just made a schedule and a rotation schedule of, 2 days apiece. You have her for 2 days and then you take her to this person for 2 days. And I made a binder with all of her medication and the phone numbers and all the things and organized everything all together. And I took her to the first house, dropped her off, and went to the airport and flew to North Carolina to visit my son.
good for you. That was
Yep.
a
That was an eye-opening
oh,
experience for them. They were shocked.
I
They'd
have some
call me and they're like, "She's been up all night long." And I'm going, "Yeah, I know. She does that all the time."
I have someone in mind that I'm going to share that with before the podcast comes out.
Good, good. I'm glad because it was
In the
crazy. I
quote.
shouldn't have let it go that far, but hey,
Yeah.
you know what? It was effective. It worked. But when I got home 2 weeks later, my husband picked me up at the airport. We drove in my driveway, and they were sitting in my driveway with her in the car.
Waiting for you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But they were a lot more understanding. They were a lot more supportive.
Yes.
They were much more willing to help after that. After because it was eye-opening. They said,
Yes.
I haven't had hardly any sleep in 2 days, and I'm going, two
Mm-hmm.
whole days.
Yeah.
Really? It's been weeks for me,
Right. Right. That is
months.
simple. Yeah. That's
Mhm.
that's drastic and it was effective. Good for you. So, talking about your books, writing 10 books is an incredible achievement. How
Thank
do
you.
you go about your writing process, and how do you ensure that your books resonate with the diverse experiences of caregivers?
Well, first off, they're not all filled with words,
Mm-hmm.
like because like these two are coloring books.
Okay.
So that was easier. And then this one is a journal. Right to Remember is a journal, big, thick journal that has lots of room for caregivers to write in, to vent, to make lists, to record medication, notes you want to take to the doctor, whatever you want to do. There's plenty of space in it. I created the two coloring books because of mom, who I was taking her to the Daily Living Center at that time for a few hours through the day to have a nice little break.
Mm-hmm.
And she colored a little dog blue, and this lady started yelling at her.
Oh,
And
no.
I was immediately upset that the lady was yelling. And then my second thought was, hold on, we're at the Daily Living Center. This lady's coming here. She obviously has issues herself. So I need to be a little more understanding and forgiving, but I also need to solve this problem because I can't always be there and I don't want mom being yelled at. So
Mm-hmm.
I created mandalas. They're original patterns. There's no right or wrong. You can color it whatever color you want, and it's fine. And so that's when I did Color Me Calm. And then I bought a program and learned how to put words on top of them. And so I made more mandalas and
Mm-hmm.
created Faith Lives Here. It has inspirational messages on each page. It may be Jesus loves you. It could be, whatever, let go, let God. There's just lots of different quotes and things on those pages. And so mom would color on the page and read the quote out loud about 30 times while she's
Wow.
coloring the page. And so the workers there told me that it blessed everybody at the Daily Living Center because they'd all hear the reminders of God is in control, just so that was
Okay.
pretty awesome. So those were easy to do as far as writing because there wasn't a lot of writing.
Mm-hmm.
And but my process is to always think about I'm so burdened by what the caregiver goes through because I lived it and because I know how hard it was. And so what I do is think back to the things that I struggled the most with, and those are the things that I want to provide answers for caregivers. And
Mm-hmm.
so on my first book, it's again, there's a lot of well, the only negative review that I got on caregiving, how to hold on while letting go, was that I had too much God in it. I'll take that. You can hit me for that any day. I'll take it. Because it does have Bible stories in it, and it relates to nature and stuff too, because the Bible relates to our life. So that's why it's in there. But anyway, so I wrote it telling kind of the struggles with Jean with Alzheimer's, the solutions, pointing to the solutions that we created to keep her safe because she was a huge wanderer. She'd get out, 2 a.m. was her favorite time to go wandering.
Did you
And
not
so,
change the lock?
huh?
Did you not change the lock, like put it higher so she cannot reach it or that
Oh, girl. Yeah,
something?
we put it higher. You know what she did? She
She
pushed a
threw
chair over and climbed up on the chair and unlocked it.
Oh
Then I
my,
was like, oh my gosh, she's going to break a hip. She's going to
yeah.
fall off this chair. So we had to put the solution down low for her, which wasn't the sliding lock. We took a wedge, which I picture it in there. And well, actually, it's you know how you have the flip down metal doorstop? It
Mm-hmm.
flips down to hold the doors open. We put it
Yeah.
on the inside of the door and flipped it down. You can't open the door. It
Mm-hmm.
won't open. And she never looked down. She always looked
Looked up.
medium or up. And so it depends on your person again, because my mom always looked down. My mom would bend over and pick stuff up off the floor all the time, nearly falling on her head over and over. So it depends on your person. Yeah, so we created all that stuff, and that's all in here. And then the latest one, the Caregiver's Advocate, a complete guide to support and resources. I was approached by Brave Healer Productions, and they asked me if I'd like to be lead author because they realized they had not done a caregiver book. And so I
Mhm.
was like, sure, great. I mean, I've never done a collaboration book, but why not?
It's pretty
I'm one of
popular these days. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm one of those jump off a cliff and we'll learn how to fly on the way down.
All right.
So that's what I did, and my goal was to hit number one in at least one category in the US. I'm
And you
so
did.
thrilled to say
Oh,
we
yeah.
hit number one in all six
Mhm.
categories. We hit number one in Canada, number one in Australia, and let's see, Canada, Australia, and the US, top 50 in the UK, number one Amazon new release. I mean, it's amazing
That's
because I gathered 20 experts from 4 different countries and had them come together and write about their area of expertise. And I outlined it because I had an idea of the topics that I wanted to have covered.
mm-hmm.
And it all just worked out because I'd be talking to one lady and she's a memory care expert and that's all she focuses on. And I'm like, sweet, we need that in the book, and so we put it together. And the really cool thing is I can't believe this. I have now 8 people who have come to me, approached me, and said, if you do a second one, I'd like to write a chapter.
Yeah. Add me to that list, please.
Yay! I would love to. I would love to. So, I mean,
That's
it's so
good.
exciting because it's just blown up. And because that's the thing I realized in the beginning, I didn't want to keep it just to the US because
Mm-hmm.
dementia doesn't just belong in the US.
No, it's
It,
growing exponentially worldwide. It's actually a worldwide epidemic and not
yes,
unknown too, right? So many,
yes,
it's sort of niche. Like if you've not actually dealt with someone with dementia, you don't tend to, it's like, yeah, dementia that, yeah, they forget and stuff like that, right? But I
yeah.
tell people it's almost like COVID. If you've never had it, you know of someone who has it. It's becoming
Mm-hmm.
that common. So
Yes.
more people know about it. And my line is, starting with children, because I think when children know, they're able to cope better when their grandparents are acting weird. They don't internalize it and start acting out, right? So
Right.
dementia education, I want it to be as commonplace as diabetes, heart disease, and all that. Everyone needs to know more about it.
I agree 100%. Absolutely. And that was the other thing I created the coloring books too, so that my grandchildren could color with my mom,
Mhm,
because that was an activity that they could do together and enjoy together. And Nanny, as they called her, was acting normal then because Nanny was enjoying and coloring with them.
mhm.
So it was just a huge, huge blessing. So I recently actually just last week created 2 more coloring books.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't have them here yet even to show you, but one is a whimsical cat coloring book. It's cats in costumes doing all different jobs and things. And then the other one is dogs and puppies, and I forgot the name of the book.
Oh, it's okay.
It's totally brand new,
That is awesome.
but it's
Good.
on Amazon. If you search Debbie
Okay.
DeMoss Compton, you
Uh,
can find all my books there. And
okay.
then all of my dementia related books are on my website, thepurplevine.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. So hopefully some of our listeners will take the opportunity and seek you out.
I
You're
hope so.
full of information, very, practical solutions to challenges.
Mhm.
So, can you tell us more about this Purple Vine support services that you have? Like, what are all the different things you do there, please?
I do a lot of stuff. Because I didn't put any parameters on it. I didn't really know where I was going. I just knew that, okay, God said to do this, so we're going to do that.
Yeah.
And so I have all these different books. We talked about several of them. There's other books out there too, that are on the website. And then I do a weekly blog on the website. Or no, sorry, weekly newsletter on the website. The blog is not weekly. It's whenever I get a chance, I throw something else out there. But there are tons of articles out there also on the blog that give you information and things. But when you join the newsletter, then you get a newsletter once a week because, and it's not long, it's action steps, it's new information, it's pointers, caregiver tips, caregiver information, and it covers not just taking care of your loved one, but taking care of you and yourself. And so then I give a lot of free gifts and stuff away in that too. And I only do it once a week because caregivers don't have time to read an email every day. Once a week is about all you can handle typically, and then I know that's all I could handle. So then I do the one-on-one Zoom consultations where caregivers can talk to me privately, bring all their information or concerns, tell me what's going on, and I can help them find solutions. I can help them de-stress and laugh. And so, which is so important because the joy of the Lord is our strength. And we lose that joy oftentimes when we're in the middle of caregiving and struggling. So I help with that, and it's just whatever they want to talk about. It's not a structured thing at all. It's directed by them. What do you want to talk about? Let's talk about it, and I'll help you. What do you have questions about? I'll help you. And sometimes that means researching to find a small wheelchair that'll fit through the doorway. I've done before. It's just whatever the need is. That's what I just want to meet the need. Then I also do speeches. I love doing those. I do in person and via Zoom. And so I talk to caregiver support groups, I talk to senior groups at senior centers, at daily living centers, wherever, at churches. I love talking to churches because I tell them, I'm like, hey, y'all are my people because, you may not like what I say, but you got to love me because I'm your sister.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet
So,
you do because you come with so much information. So, yeah,
oh,
that's
we have a great time. Dementia is a very depressing subject. And so people are often hard pressed to see how you're going to laugh. I guarantee you're going to laugh because
You
there's funny
know,
there.
actually, the dementia, yes, in itself, the whole journey is depressing, but you can make it exciting. Like,
Yes.
when you don't dwell on the disability, like I have a friend who owns this company called Dementia Ability. So dementia ability. People often think, oh, when someone has dementia, it's done and their life is over. No, there's so much more life to live. And so
Yes.
people ask me, oh, that it must be such a stressful job. I go, no, my job in the memory care, we have two homes. It's so much fun. We
Yeah.
have fun all the time. When we go
Yeah.
to work, I don't even see it as work because they are home, very home-like, right? You feel like you are home with relatives and you don't want
Mm-hmm.
to go home and they have fun, they dance. It's just, it's so uplifting. And knowing
Yes.
making a difference in people's lives is such a joyful thing. So
It's so rewarding.
yes, I tell people my job is not stressful. It's actually fun. Because when you have passion, you don't see it as work. You enjoy what
Yes.
you do. And that is what, like, if caregivers can only stimulate their loved ones more, or again, if you're overwhelmed, seek help. Like there are day programs, there are people like yourself that people can talk to. And
Hmm.
also, like I wanted to make this point as difficult as dementia is for everyone and for people to accept or people to understand, add cultural sensitivities, add stigma, and people from marginalized communities where we don't want to talk about these things, where we hide these things. Imagine what those people go through, right? When you are not being honest with your doctor, you're not telling your doctor your loved one is experiencing responsive behaviors because you don't want them, what they would tell me, put them away. If people would only
Hmm.
understand and know that, if we can be honest, if we can talk and ask for help, it will make it a lot easier. It's not something
Hmm.
the person has to deal with, right?
Right. Right. Oh, you're absolutely right. You just the stigma is a shame that is there and that it does exist. And the thought process, like you mentioned, that your life is over, that's just not true. And I've had people think that because when mom, particularly, couldn't carry on a conversation anymore, they're like, well, she's not there. And I said, yes, she is, and we still have fun. And you talk about the dancing, it's so funny. I didn't dance. I did not grow up dancing. We didn't dance, as a matter of fact. My dad was like, no. So, so we didn't. But mom got dementia. Mom starts dancing.
All
So I'm
right.
like, okay, well, good for her. This is great. So I was with her and we are at the Daily Living Center and they're having this party and this guy's playing the organ up at the front or keyboard up at the front. And she says, let's dance. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Mom wants to dance. We're going to dance because she managed to get those two words out and set them together. Okay, fine. And so I thought we were going to just stand up by the table there at the back of the room. No, she drags me right up to the front in front of everybody and starts dancing. And so I'm like, all right, let's just do this. And so we are just dancing like crazy people. Johnny Cash, Ring of Fire.
That is awesome. Actually, speaking of dancing, we were fortunate to participate in one of these documentary films with the National Ballet School of Canada called Dancer, Not Dementia. It's on YouTube.
Nice.
It's beautiful. And actually, we're working on another project with them it's called Sharing Dance Older Adults, where they are, producing dances in communities of color. Actually, this
Uh-huh.
culturally sensitive approach because the whole concept is to eradicate stigma through dance. So
That's awesome.
they do visit my home from time to time to come dance with the residents, and what a ball. We just have so much fun dancing with them.
I love it. That's fantastic because it's great therapy and
It,
it helps restore the brain for just a short time.
the
And so,
brain,
and
hearts, the
yeah,
muscles,
I mean,
all
mom
right.
didn't know, mom didn't know who I was one day. And it just broke my heart. It was so difficult. But we started dancing and singing and we finished the song and she sat back down and she said, it's so good to see you, Debbie.
Oh.
And I just started crying because it's like, "Ugh, you didn't even know me 5 minutes ago." But
Mm.
just a few minutes of the dancing got the oxygen pumping through the brain and helped her to remember and have that recall. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's power.
There is, absolutely. So, we'll move on. Looking back now, what is the one piece of advice you wish you had known when you first became a caregiver?
I needed to let go of perfectionism a lot faster because am a perfectionist. I like to have things done a certain way, and I needed to let go of that a lot faster because with dementia, it's not going to be perfect. And it doesn't matter. It's okay. So I needed to hear that. And then I also needed to hear self-care is not selfish
Yes.
because I did not understand that as we talked about a little bit earlier. And And so I think if I would have heard those two things at the beginning, it would have made my journey a lot easier. And again, that's why I do what I do. I try to get a hold of caregivers when they're early in the process if possible, to prepare them, to help them put things in place, put your support group in place at the beginning before you need them. Get those people lined up. And what does that look like? I can help you with it. Where do you look for them? I can help you. Give you ideas and suggestions. There's things that you can do because then when you have your tribe going along with you, I mean, it takes a village to help a person with dementia. Then
Mhm.
you have a happier journey and a more peaceful journey.
Right, right. Wow. Okay, so we've talked a lot about burnout. Burnout is real.
Yeah.
And research says that some older caregivers may die before the people they are caring for. So, and burnout is actually quite difficult sometimes to diagnose. This is what my book Unraveled is about. It explores burnout and the complexity of diagnosing it. How do you support caregivers when they feel overwhelmed, and what practical steps can they take to regain balance and purpose?
Yeah, great question. Great question. And I love your book. That's awesome. What I do is to teach them first that it's a real thing, that it affects emotional, physical, spiritual, all of you. Burnout is very real and can drain you completely and totally. And then I tell them that you need to find a little bit of time just for yourself every day. And typical response, which would have been mine too, I can't. I don't have it. I can't do it. But you can. And there are ways to do it, like if you've heard of visual imagery, and
Mm.
that's where you you could just be going to the restroom, which is what I do, go to the bathroom to have a little peace and quiet, shut the door, make sure you lock it because they're going to come in if you don't. And so, but go in there and then just close your eyes and in your mind, go to that happy place. My happy place is the beach. So I go to the beach and I hear the sounds of the ocean and I hear the waves and I hear the birds flying overhead and I feel the sand beneath my feet. And you imagine all these things. You just take yourself to that location, and it's been scientifically proven to reduce your stress, to lower your blood pressure, because your mind doesn't know it's not real. In your
Mhm.
mind, you're there. You
Yeah,
are at the ocean, just feeling the sunshine on your face,
yeah.
and so I recorded several sessions of that later, also, one of the forest and one of the ocean, because I had some people say, well, I just can't do that. You can do that, but I can't do that. So I'm like,
Mhm.
yes, you can. Okay. So I recorded a little piece, for them. Just a little 5 minutes is all it is. But in that 5 minutes, you can calm down because when you're trying to think of a solution, you're trying to figure out how to handle a problem and you're stressed and you're so tense and so uptight, you can't come up with a solution. You can't think clearly. You have to get the oxygen going back up through your brain and the blood flowing again so that those solutions can come to you. You're closed off when you're uptight like this.
Yeah.
So take 5 minutes and do it. Breathing exercises, same thing. I've done them in nursing homes before when you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so wound up, I can't handle this anymore. Step out into the hall, take some deep breaths. And whether it's box breathing, whether it's 4x4 breathing, there's several different breathing techniques that I teach people to use. And you can do that all alone, all by yourself, just in a couple of minutes of time, and it's incredible the benefits that it can have. So that's just a couple right off the bat.
Wonderful. And the other thing is that burnout does not only affect caregivers, it affects everyone, students, workers, like especially through COVID. More, I think there was no one that wasn't touched by burnout a little bit. That was what actually inspired my book, where you have students dropping out of schools, where you have people quitting their jobs, people start to, self-medicate with alcohol and drugs. People don't even know, you
Hmm.
don't even know what's happening,
Right.
so it's
Right.
and this work at home thing that, I personally don't subscribe to it because a lot of people, their only social connection was work. And now that they are staying at home and, no one is checking in on them, you don't know, they are barely surviving, so I'm
Right.
encourage people. Reach out to your friends, reach out to family members. Don't just text,
Yes.
call, talk to people.
Yes.
You know,
Do a Zoom.
doing, invite people out to come out of their homes. So because when you're experiencing burnout, for some people it starts to manifest in physical symptoms. You're going to
Right.
the doctor cannot diagnose you, as was the case in my book. And then eventually,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, it's like, oh, maybe I've lost my mind or something. But no, there is something there. And eventually, seek counseling, do whatever it is that you need to do to just get, to come out of this vicious circle.
Yes.
It's very important for everyone to know what burnout is, what the signs may be. And so when you
Mm-hmm.
feel different, you don't enjoy things that you used to enjoy, it's time to seek help. Talk to somebody, talk to a faith leader.
Yes.
Don't believe in counseling. Talk to an elderly person that you trust, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If you know someone who has no friends, who has no one, reach out to them. Be a
Yes.
brother and sister's keeper.
Exactly, exactly. And that was one thing that I came up with too that really helped because I was caregiving by myself. My family, were very supportive, but two of my siblings live in a different state. And one lives here, but he was working full time, so he can't, he's not much of a help through the day. It's just me. And I had been praying and praying about it because I was just crying out to God and saying, I've got to have help. And then I realized we have seniors at our church that are lonely. They're still fully mentally capable. They don't drive anymore, which is fine. I called them and said, "Hey, would you like to come over and watch a movie with my mother in law? Would you like to just sit on the couch and watch a movie with her?" They were excited to do it. So we go and pick them up. We bring them there. They sit on the couch, watch a movie together. I go soak in a hot tub and just chill.
Yeah.
Another time, I just went out and gardened, so I could be in my garden, be where I enjoy the garden and nature. And it was fantastic. I was there. If there were any issues, I was there. I could handle it. But it was a time for me to unplug, release, and get away. And it was wonderful for these little seniors because they felt useful. They felt needed. They felt necessary again. They had companionship. It was great. It was a wonderful win all the way around.
Always awesome. So beautiful. So, community, that brings me to my next question. So, community and connections play a vital role in caregiving journey, right? So, you've
Yes.
already explained some of the things that you've done, things that you did while you were caregiving. So, what advice do you give to your to the caregivers that you work with on how to build these essential support systems?
Start early and put your system in place. Talk to people, see who will be willing to help, ask them things that they would be willing to help with. Because some people are very comfortable cooking meals. They'll cook and commit to cooking you a meal once a week, every week. Other people don't like cooking, don't enjoy that, but they would love to mow the yard and take care of that for you. So, whatever it is, just get them in place to help. If you're not understanding what the doctor's saying and you need help interpreting, call me, call other healthcare supporters. There are persons there who can help you, and I can help you find them. Actually had a lady in Chicago, of all places, tell me that there was no help available for her. And so I Googled it and looked up a whole ton of places that were close to her and, called her back and shared the places and the phone numbers and all the information. So if you're having trouble finding it, reach out and we will help you find it. Google DHS, Department of Human Services, the Area Center on Aging. They will help you. Just a quick Google search and you can find help. And a lot of that help is free. So you can't say, well, we can't afford it. A lot of it's free. And same way, if you go to a church or a synagogue or a faith place, talk to people there. There are people there who are willing to help and would be a blessing to them and to you. So we
Mhm.
talked about how hard it is to receive. It is for me as well. But we have to get over that and not rob them of their blessing and let them help us so that we all benefit. Because you can't pour from an empty cup.
No,
And
you
if
can.
you
There's
when
nothing.
you're drained, you're not a good caregiver. So
No, you.
if you're trying to do it all alone, saying, because I have to be the one to take care of everything, well, guess what? you're not at your best. You're not giving that fantastic care that you think that you are because you're exhausted. So if you had a little break, then you could do a better job. So it's about reframing your mindset. It all comes down to mindset.
Oh, that's awesome. And the thing about talking about churches and this religious places, organizations, it's really sad when maybe for lack of awareness or lack of knowledge, they don't support their congregants when they are going through these challenges. Because
Hmm.
I've had a couple of residents who were very active in church, and then when dementia strikes, they are alone. No one comes, so it becomes just the spouses, caring for each other and so forth. So it's so important I spoke at a church recently for church leaders, synagogue
Hmm.
leaders, mosque leaders, these people,
Hmm.
good for society to learn about dementia, bringing people to
Yes.
talk about it, to educate and to enlighten your congregation so that you will know how to support not just your congregants but other people in the community. I actually
Yes.
said a charitable organization is called it's called a Rose for Grandma Wellness Hub, where we focus on BIPOC communities, like communities of color, Black and
Hmm.
Indigenous people that are facing the challenges of dementia, to educate and support and raise awareness and so forth. Because, like I said at one point, marginalized communities have a different challenge on top of just the disease itself, right? So it's really important that we reach out to everyone.
Hmm.
Schools, you can learn from anywhere. Just
Yes, absolutely.
let's be more open and talk more freely about it. And like you
Hmm.
said also at the beginning, there's so much information, so many resources out there today than there were before, right? And
Yes,
I find that grassroots is so important. Even
I
private
agree.
physicians' offices and stuff like that, bringing information to them so that patients can get them more readily.
And one thing that I realized when I was doing the caregiver's advocate was exactly that. It's like I have my own resources in the places that I know, but I got to thinking about it and it's like, you know what? I bet everybody else has resources that are different than mine too. And so the entire last chapter of the caregiver's advocate is just resources for caregivers, and they're nationwide resources. Many of them are free. And so that's why we put them all in the back of the book and just combined all of our information to be able to support caregivers. And I think that when you're talking about the churches and the places of faith, you hit it exactly on the nail. They just don't understand. They're not aware that that person, the caregiver, is struggling so much because they don't really know anything about dementia, or they don't know much about it, or they have that misconception that so many people do, that, oh, well, they're just forgetting things every now and again. And that's the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to it than that. But it's awareness, and that's why I love, going and speaking and sharing, and then helping, working with some churches to create programs so that they can support people better. And the same with doctors. I've got several doctors now that I tell them, it's like when you have someone who has dementia and they're in the early stages, give them my card and have them call me, and I will let them know what to expect and what is down the road and what this diagnosis means for your life, because doctors don't have time to explain all of that, but yet the person needs to know it.
Yeah, so true. So, my last question to you is there a particular story or moment in your caregiving journey that has left an impact and something that you inspires your work today? Is there any well, I'm sure you have a million of them, but is
I
there
do.
a particular one that you can share with us?
Yeah, I was going, okay, well, there's this and there's this and there's that. A funny thing that always struck with me, and I'm not sure, I don't really know how to fully understand this one, but I'll go ahead and share it with you anyway.
Mhm.
I was lifting my mother-in-law out of the bed and transferring her to her wheelchair. And so I was lifting and turning her around and getting ready to sit her in the wheelchair. And she said, "Don't put me there. Merle's in that chair."
Mm.
Merle is my dad, and he had died 3 years prior to this, and I was like, "Oh my goodness." And I'm standing there holding her and thinking, "I can't hold her for very long. I gotta figure this out," and I don't know what to do, and I'm kind of freaking out because of all the possibilities here that could be going on, and so I said, "Tell him to move." And
Mm.
so and then I put her down in the wheelchair. But
Wow.
that was one that causes you to go, "Okay, I'm not sure how
Mm.
to interpret that or how to explain it." But
Yeah.
one that really touched my heart, this one's real short, so I'll hurry. Um, my mother-in-law hadn't been able to speak, and for about a week, she hadn't been able to say any words or anything. And I was pulling up her pants, helping her up and everything. And she had this moment of crystal clarity, and she looked me straight in the eyes and she said, "Thank you."
Oh.
And I just cried, and she had a little tear running down her cheek and stuff too, and it was like, "Ah, such a blessing, such a
It
blessing."
is. Wow, that's
The
beautiful.
last thing she ever said to me, "Thank you."
That is awesome. That is awesome. Like, caring for people with dementia, they don't often say thank you because they can't, but
They
just
can't.
the joy in their faces. It's like I have a resident who just came back from the hospital recently. Um, I went in on Thursday and she was just beside herself. She was hugging me, kissing me, just like it was so
Oh,
beautiful.
oh,
Like,
she missed you.
yeah, so when you
Oh,
say that, like, they say feelings are always intact, feelings don't go away. So, just be kind, be gentle,
yes.
loving to people because even if they can't express themselves, they can feel it. It is so
Yes.
important. Wow.
Yes, and they know when you're frustrated with them, they can feel it. So you
Yeah,
need to take care of
very,
yourself so you're not frustrated with them.
yeah. Yeah. It has been such a beautiful discussion, Debbie. Thank you so much. We should do this again soon.
I would love it. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much.